When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject: Day Labor. User: Demoman4. Posted April 26, 1996.
Last summer, I got in some trouble with the cops, but it wasn't anything major. My buddy Dave and I would play this game where we'd go out to rural Route 7, a straight stretch by Holiday Station store, and it'd hit the gas, then both of us would close our eyes. The first person to freak out and open their eyes lost and had to pay for Slurpees. Well, no one ever drives the road at night except us, so no one ever got hurt. But then last summer, we messed up. Well, Dave messed up, and we went clear off the road right into a field. We weren't hurt, and the car, a big old Buick, was in pretty good shape too, all things considered, but we mangled some farmer's fence, and my old man lost his damn mind. He paid for the fence out of his pocket, then said that I'd be working all next summer to pay it off. I kinda hoped he'd forget about the whole thing, but the first Monday after class ended, he sent me out with a stack of resumes. I hoped I'd get something cool, like a job at the video store, but instead, I ended up working on a reno crew over in Onamia. The house belonged to an old lady who had lived there for a real long time and never did any kind of maintenance. She died getting out of the tub sometime during the winter, and so it took a while for anyone to find her. Throw in all the neglect, plus something like 30 cats living in the house, and you can imagine how bad the place looked and smelled. My boss Mike told me all of this on day one because I was part of the core crew. It was me, him, Big Jer, and Chris, plus a bunch of random day laborers who come in and out depending on who's available. Because most of the day-to-day guys didn't speak much English, none of them have any idea about the house's history, so when they started talking about weird stuff going on, I knew it wasn't coming from some superstition. Basically, it started with Carlos, a chunky guy who was part of the first day labor group. He literally walked up to the front door, stuck his head inside for half a second, said something in Spanish, then straight up walked away. We'd given him a ride to the house and he didn't give a damn, just kept going on up the street till he disappeared over the horizon. A couple of the other Mexican guys were edgy after this, but they stayed on. The radios were the next thing. It's a big house, so we had two on each floor. Upstairs were boom boxes, downstairs were old dial radios we'd found while doing initial cleanup. It didn't matter which one we were listening to, the station would just randomly change. And I don't mean the dial would drift slightly off the mark, they'd full-on swing to another station. I know sometimes you can program multiple preset stations into some newer models, but these weren't those. Honestly, I was surprised they turned on at all. Eventually, I got annoyed and brought my newer boombox from home. It has a digital tuner, and it did the same thing. The lights have been an issue, too. Even after we move the switches, they'll turn themselves on and off for no apparent reason. Chris is the Sparky, so when it first happened, we started busting his chops, and Mike brought in another guy, Lamar, to double-check his work. Turns out his work is fine. The lights just have a mind of their own. The biggest thing that's happened so far, and boy do I hope it's the last, was the crash on Friday. couple new big box stores have broken ground recently, and those crews have scooped up most of the good day guys, so we're down to the core group. All four of us were upstairs when it happened, so I know the sound we heard didn't come from one of our guys dropping something. What we heard was a massive crash, and I mean massive. Imagine a train hitting a rock wall covered in tin foil, and you have some idea of what this sounded like. Not only did it make us all jump, but it put a fear in me I've never known. Imagine an egg breaking inside your chest, but instead of yolk, it leaks a coldness that spreads through your whole body. For at least a minute afterward, we all just stood there looking at each other. Big Jer was white as a sheet, and I actually thought Chris was gonna cry. Mike spoke first and said we should go up and see what the hell had happened. He paused for a second, then emphasized that he meant all of us should go. Thinking about it now, it's kind of funny. We must have looked like Scoob and the gang, creeping our way up those stairs. Mike first, then me, then Chris, then Big Jer way at the back. When we got upstairs, we didn't find any people, but it did look like a bomb went off. Because we had fewer guys than we wanted, we left the upstairs mid-job so we could concentrate on the first floor. It meant the floor had become a dumping ground for stuff we didn't need at any given moment. Sawhorses, toolboxes, replacement windows, drywall sheets, stuff like that. Somehow, all of that stuff was smashed to a freaking pulp. I mean, the toolboxes had been launched across the room hard enough to dent the studs. The tools scattered everywhere. The sawhorses, windows, and drywall sheets looked like they'd gone 10 rounds with Mike Tyson. They were completely destroyed, and I mean smashed to pieces. Once we got over our shock, Mike sent us to search the entire upstairs for the person responsible, but there was no one around. There isn't even a way to climb upstairs from the outside, so it's not possible for someone to have snuck in, done what they did, then snuck back out. Besides, even if they had snuck in, I think it would have taken the Tasmanian devil to do all that damage in the amount of time they had. Now, no one really talked to each other during the cleanup, but I could tell they were all freaked the hell out. We finished up the day, but our hearts weren't in it. We didn't even have our usual Friday afternoon tailgate beers. Kind of wonder how many people will bother turning up for work on Monday.
Subject: Trouble Brewing. User: X6 Brewer. Posted September 16th, 1995.
Here in Wisconsin, we like our beer, and a lot of folks feed their families making the stuff. It's a rich tradition that goes all the way back to the 1830s when immigrants from places like England, Wales, and Germany arrived, bringing with them a long tradition of beer drinking and pub culture. There's an argument among historians about who opened the first brewery in the state, with some people claiming it was Owens in 1840 and others claiming there were spots in Mineral Point and Elk Grove before that time. Whatever you believe, it's hard to argue against the idea that beer is a part of who we are, which brings me to my story. I work at a brewery which shall remain nameless in case anyone ever finds this. It's a great place to be, and I love working there, so the last thing I want is to cast aspersions on the place or anyone involved with its running, but it is haunted. I know, who believes in ghosts, right? Well, I didn't, and I always thought the boys were shining me on with the stories they'd tell in the break room, but then I had my own encounter, and it changed everything. In order for it to make sense, we gotta go back to the history of drinking in Wisconsin just for a second. As I said, we love beer, and During Prohibition, that became a bit of an issue. If you're not up on your history, Prohibition was an idiotic period of time during which the manufacture, transport, and sale of alcohol became illegal, following the enacting of the 18th Amendment in 1919. The Volstead Act, which laid down the specifics of the law around Prohibition, went into effect in 1920, and the Milwaukee legislature followed it up with the Severson Act, which enforced the federal law. A lot of breweries in Wisconsin shut down completely, and others started making different things. Near beer or non-alcoholic beer was kind of a losing proposition, so companies who made that, like Potosi, didn't do very well and joined the ones who closed immediately after Volstead came into effect. Other companies did a lot better. Schlitz started making chocolate bars, Blatz did chewing gum, Pabst went into the dairy industry, and so on. The company I work for now, they never really closed. On paper, they were making near beer, but in actuality, they kept right on with business as usual, with a twist. Prohibition made alcohol very expensive, so people wanted the most bang for their buck. Getting drunker faster is the job of spirits, and so our brewery installed several clandestine stills on the property. The near beer, which no one bought, kept getting churned out, and the stills secretly paid the bills. Everything was ticking along like clockwork until one of the stills blew during a night shift and killed the woman who was minding it. Somehow, the owners either managed to pass off the explosion as part of the near beer making process, or money changed hands to get officials to look the other way. It's hard to say. Eventually, Prohibition ended and the company went back to doing what it had always done best, making the nectar of the gods, aka beer. This is where I come in. I started working here on the night shift in 1975. My job was primarily packaging, though I did a little receiving when orders arrived late. At the time, I didn't understand why, but I always felt on edge during working hours. Sometimes this cold sweat would come over me, and I'd think I was about to get sick. The expected bug never arrived, and the feeling would evaporate the second I walked off site in the morning. One night during coffee break, I was shooting the breeze with my supervisor, who I'll call Jimmy, and I mentioned this whole thing. Jimmy gave me this knowing look and asked if it only happened while I was in Building 2. I gave it some thought, and yeah, he was right. That's the only place it ever came on. After a second, Jimmy nodded and said, "That's where it happened," and he told me the story I just told you. Like I said before, I figured he was goofing on me, so I went along with him, but didn't take it seriously. It wasn't until I heard the voice that I started to believe. Night crew is much smaller than day crew, so I get to spend at least a portion of my shift on my own. On this particular night, I was in the cold room of Building 2 for some reason or another, and I was just about to head out when I heard a woman's voice say my name. We only have a couple girls on staff, Eloise and Helen, and they both work the store, neither of them on night shift. Also, I'd hung around with them enough during company softball games and such that I could recognize their voices. This wasn't them. The woman's voice called my name again, and I was so freaking scared I can't even tell you. It felt like I was being stabbed in the heart with an icicle. I run like hell out of that cold room, half expecting to see the boys standing around laughing about having pranked me, but it was just me there. Well, just me and this thing that darted around one of the tanks. It looked maybe like a raccoon, but darker, without any markings. Like a raccoon that was all black, if such a thing exists. I didn't think the voice belonged to the raccoon. I'm not that crazy. But chasing an animal gave me something to do, instead of thinking about what I'd heard, so I went after it, but couldn't find it anywhere. I stuck out the rest of my shift, but only just, and in the morning I asked to be switched to the day shift. No questions were asked, and I've been working it ever since.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.